The arrival at Nova Prime. The gleaming hull of the interstellar ship, horizon sliced through the inky void, its destination the mysterious world of Nova Prime. Inside the bridge, Ambassador Rick Johnson stood with his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the approaching orb of blue and green. After months of travel, they were finally here. Humanity's first official diplomatic mission to an alien world. The anticipation was palpable as Rick's stomach churned with a mix of excitement and apprehension. At 45, he was one of Earth's most seasoned diplomats, but this mission dwarfed anything he'd done before. The fate of humanity's relationship with an advanced alien civilization rested on his shoulders. Entering Nova Prime's orbit in 5 minutes, announced Captain Sarah Chen from her command chair. Rick nodded, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on him. He had prepared for many diplomatic encounters, but none as monumental as this. Dr. Maya Patel, the mission's xenobiologist, approached him with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Any last words of wisdom, Ambassador?" she asked, her dark eyes sparkling with contained enthusiasm. Rick turned to face her and his small team. "Remember your training. We're here to build bridges, not burn them. These Novians may look similar to us, but their culture could be wildly different. Stay alert, stay respectful." As the ship began its descent towards the orbital station, Rick's mind raced through the scant information they had on the Novians. They were humanoid in appearance, technologically advanced, and willing to engage in diplomacy. Beyond that, they were stepping into the unknown. The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon Rick led his team through the airlock and onto Nova Prime's orbital station. The architecture was sleek and organic, with all curved lines and iridescent surfaces that seemed to pulse with an inner light. A delegation of Novians awaited them. Rick's breath caught in his throat as he took in their appearance. If not for their slightly larger eyes and the faint shimmering patterns on their skin, they could have passed for humans. "Welcome to Nova Prime, Ambassador Johnson," said the lead Novian in perfect English. Her voice was melodious, and she introduced herself as Zara, Chief of Interspecies Relations. "We are honored by your presence." Rick bowed slightly. "The honor is ours, Chief Zara. We come in peace and friendship, eager to learn about your people and culture." Zara's lips curved in what Rick hoped was a smile. "Then let us begin with a tour of the station. There is much to discuss." As they walked, Rick noticed how the Novians kept a careful distance from his team. He filed the observation away for later consideration. The tour concluded in a large conference room. As Rick's team settled into their seats, a stern-faced Novian entered, flanked by 2 others who looked like security. "Ambassador Johnson, allow me to introduce Consul Aria, who will be overseeing our negotiations," Zara said. Aria fixed Rick with an intense gaze. Despite her severe expression, Rick couldn't help but notice her striking beauty. She looked so human it was uncanny, save for the faint shimmering patterns on her skin that seemed to shift and dance in the light. "Consul Aria, it's an honor to," Rick began, rising to greet her. "Before we proceed," Aria interrupted, her voice sharp, "there are protocols you must understand. Chief among them, there is to be absolutely no physical contact between our species. Is that clear?" Rick blinked, taken aback by her brusque manner. "Of course, Consul. Though may I ask why?" "The reasons are not your concern," Aria snapped. "Simply follow the protocol." An awkward silence fell over the room. Rick glanced at his team, seeing his own confusion mirrored in their faces. Perhaps Zara interjected smoothly, "We should begin with a brief overview of our respective cultures to establish common ground." The next few hours passed in a flurry of information exchange. Rick found himself fascinated by Novian society, their emphasis on collective consciousness, their advanced biotechnology, their deep connection to their planet's ecosystem. Yet, throughout it all, Aria remained cold and aloof. Her responses were clipped and often bordering on hostile. As the meeting drew to a close, Rick stood to address the room. "Thank you all for this illuminating discussion. I believe we've laid a strong foundation for future cooperation between our peoples. Consul Aria, despite our rocky start, I hope we can move forward in a spirit of mutual respect and understanding." He extended his hand, a reflexive diplomatic gesture ingrained after decades of negotiations. Several things happened at once. Zara cried out, Aria's eyes widened in shock, and before Rick could process his mistake, his hand clasped Aria's. A jolt like electricity surged through Rick's body. He saw Aria's eyes roll back in her head as she crumpled to the floor. Chaos erupted in the conference room. Novian security swarmed around Aria's unconscious form. Zara was shouting orders, and Rick's team huddled around him protectively as Novian guards advanced with weapons drawn. "What have you done?" Zara's voice cut through the pandemonium. Her earlier friendliness evaporated. "You were expressly forbidden from physical contact." Rick's mind reeled. "I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Is she all right?" A groan from the floor drew everyone's attention. Aria stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She sat up slowly, aided by her security team, and fixed Rick with a gaze of pure venom. "You fool," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" This part sets the stage for the story, introducing the characters and the initial conflict. Each subsequent part will continue to build on this narrative, leading up to the resolution of the story. The unexpected revelation. The chaos in the conference room was palpable. As the Novian guards tightened their grip around Rick and his team, Zara's voice cut through the confusion. "You have jeopardized our diplomatic mission and violated our most sacred protocols. Scans confirm that you have impregnated Consul Aria." Rick's jaw dropped. "That's impossible. We only touched hands for a second." It was more than enough time for a transfer of nanites. Aria spat, struggling to her feet. "Your human DNA has merged with mine. A new consciousness is already forming." Rick's head spun. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of misunderstanding or mistranslation. "Please, there must be some mistake. Let's discuss this calmly." Zara's expression hardened. "There will be no more discussion. You and your team are confined to your quarters until we decide how to handle this violation." Guards escorted them out of the conference room. As they were led away, Rick caught a final glimpse of Aria. The hatred in her eyes chilled him to the bone. Whatever bridges he'd hoped to build between their species had just gone up in flames. Back in their quarters, Rick's team erupted into a frenzy of questions and recriminations. "How could you be so careless?" Dr. Patel demanded. "You're supposed to be our top diplomat." "It was an accident," Rick shot back, pacing the room like a caged animal. "A reflex. How was I supposed to know a simple handshake could cause whatever this is?" Captain Shen, ever the voice of reason, stepped between them. "Arguing won't solve anything. We need to figure out our next move. The mission's clearly in jeopardy, and if we're not careful, this could spiral into an interplanetary incident." Rick ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. "You're right. We need more information. Maya, what do you make of this nanic transfer they mentioned?" Dr. Patel frowned, her scientific curiosity overtaking her earlier anger. "It's fascinating, really. Their biology must be radically different from ours to allow for such rapid genetic exchange. But without more data, I can't even begin to understand the mechanics of it." A chime at the door interrupted their discussion. A grim-faced Novian guard entered, flanked by two others with weapons at the ready. "Ambassador Johnson, your presence is required in the medical bay for examination. The rest of you will remain here under guard." Rick's team protested, but he waved them off. "It's all right. I'll go peacefully. Maybe we can sort this mess out." As he was led through the station's winding corridors, Rick's mind whirled with possible scenarios and diplomatic strategies. Nothing in his years of experience had prepared him for anything like this. The medical bay was a marvel of alien technology. Sleek machines hummed and pulsed with an otherworldly energy. In the center of it all stood Aria, her face a mask of cold fury. "Lie down," she commanded, pointing to an examination table. Rick complied, his heart pounding. "Consult, please can we talk about this? There has to be a way to resolve this." Aria's expression remained unchanged. "Silence. Begin the scan. I want to know exactly what his human DNA is doing to my system." As the scan commenced, Rick felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. Holographic displays sprang to life around him, showing swirling patterns of light that he couldn't begin to interpret. The Novian doctor studying the readouts looked increasingly intrigued. "Fascinating," the doctor murmured. "The merger is progressing far more rapidly than anticipated. The new consciousness is already beginning to form neural pathways." Aria's face paled. "How is that possible? It's only been a few hours." "It seems the human's genetic material is catalyzing the process in unexpected ways," the doctor replied. "This hybrid entity could be unlike anything we've ever seen." Rick's head swam with the implications. "Wait, are you saying that this child, or whatever it is, will be born soon?" Aria's eyes blazed with intensity. "This is not a child. It's an abomination, a threat to the purity of our species." "Enough." A new voice rang out. Zara strode into the medical bay, her earlier diplomatic demeanor replaced by an aura of command. "The High Council has made its decision, Ambassador Johnson. Your reckless actions have placed our entire planet at risk. You and your team will be detained indefinitely while we determine how to proceed." Rick sat up, desperation clawing at him. "Please be reasonable. This was an accident, not an act of aggression. Surely we can find a peaceful resolution." Zara's expression softened slightly. "I understand this was unintentional, Ambassador, but intentions matter little in the face of potential catastrophe. The hybridization process you've initiated is unprecedented. Until we understand its full implications, we cannot risk further contamination." As Novian guards moved to escort him out, Rick locked eyes with Aria for a moment. He thought he saw a flicker of something beyond anger in her gaze, fear, perhaps, or uncertainty. "What will happen to her?" Rick asked, nodding towards Aria. "That is no longer your concern," Zara replied coldly. "Guards, return the ambassador to his quarters. Full lockdown protocols are now in effect." As Rick was led away, his mind raced. He had come to Nova Prime to forge a connection between their species, but instead, he had created one in a way he could never have imagined, and potentially doomed both their worlds in the process. The doors to his quarters hissed shut behind him, the ominous sound of multiple locks engaging. His team looked up, hope fading from their eyes as they saw his grim expression. "Well, Captain Chen," Dr. Patel asked, "how bad is it?" Rick sank into a chair, the weight of the situation crushing down on him. "Bad," he said quietly. "Very, very bad." As he recounted what had transpired in the medical bay, Rick couldn't shake the image of Aria's face from his mind. Somewhere on this alien station, a new life was forming, a bridge between their species that threatened to become a chasm instead. He had come to Nova Prime to make history. Now, he feared he had set both their worlds on a collision course with disaster. Rick stood frozen at the viewport of his quarters, staring out at the alien stars. The diplomatic catastrophe he had unwittingly triggered threatened to escalate into an interplanetary conflict. He had to do something, and fast. A soft chime from his communicator jolted him from his thoughts. An encrypted message flashed on the screen. "Medical Bay 200. Come alone." Rick's heart raced. Aria wanted to meet. It could be a trap, but it was also the first potential breakthrough they'd had since being confined. "What is it?" Captain Chen asked, noticing his reaction. Rick hesitated for only a moment. Nothing important, just another warning to stay put. He couldn't risk anyone trying to stop him from this clandestine meeting. When the station's chronometer ticked over to 1:55, Rick put his plan into action. He discovered a minor glitch in the door's locking mechanism earlier, not enough to escape completely but sufficient to slip out undetected. The corridors were eerily silent as Rick made his way to the medical bay. every shadow seeming to conceal a guard ready to apprehend him. But he reached his destination without incident, slipping inside the dimly lit room. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Aria's voice startled him. She stepped out from behind a bank of medical equipment, her expression unreadable. Rick's diplomatic training kicked in, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I'm here to find a solution, Consul, for both our peoples." Aria's eyes narrowed. "And what solution do you propose for this abomination growing inside me?" "The unlikely alliance." Rick faced Aria in the dimly lit medical bay, the sterile environment contrasting sharply with the emotional turbulence between them. "I'm here to find a solution, Consul, for both our peoples." Aria's eyes remained icy. "And what solution do you propose for this abomination growing inside me?" Rick took a deep breath, trying to steady his thoughts. "First, let's acknowledge that neither of us intended for this to happen. The circumstances are unprecedented. We need to work together to understand the implications and, if possible, find a way to ensure the safety of both our species." Aria's gaze softened just slightly. Safety. That's a word that rings hollow when faced with the potential extinction of my kind. The hybridization process is accelerating rapidly. We don't know if this new consciousness will be stable, much less beneficial. "I understand your fear," Rick said earnestly. "But fighting against each other will only make things worse. We need to pool our knowledge and resources to deal with this situation." Aria seemed to consider this for a moment. "You believe that by working together, we can control or even reverse the hybridization?" "I hope so," Rick replied. "But we need to start by studying it in detail. I'm sure your scientists and mine can come up with a solution if we provide them with the right data." Aria's expression hardened again. "You speak of cooperation, but the High Council is adamant. They see this as a threat, not an opportunity for understanding." Rick sighed. "I know the Council's position, but if we don't act swiftly, this could lead to a catastrophic conflict between our worlds. I'm not asking you to go against your people's wishes, but perhaps we can find a way to work discreetly without alerting the Council." Aria's eyes narrowed. "And why should I trust you? You're a representative of a species that, to me, has caused nothing but trouble." "Because we're both caught in this mess," Rick said. "I'm as much a victim of this situation as you are. We both want to protect our people, and that's a common goal." A long silence followed. Finally, Aria nodded slowly. "Very well. If you're sincere, then we have a tentative agreement. But know this, if I sense any betrayal, I will not hesitate to act." Rick nodded. "Understood. Let's start by getting the data from the medical scans and the research on the hybridization process. I'll arrange for our scientists to be brought in." Aria agreed and left the room to contact her scientists. Rick returned to his quarters, where his team awaited him anxiously. "What happened?" Dr. Patel asked, her concern evident. "We've made a tentative agreement," Rick said. "Aria and I will be working together to understand this hybridization process and find a solution. I need you all to be prepared for a collaborative effort." Captain Shen raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure about this? Working with Aria could be risky, and there's still the possibility of being discovered." "It's our best chance," Rick replied. "We need to move quickly and carefully. Our goal is to prevent a conflict and ensure the safety of both species." As they prepared for their clandestine collaboration, Rick's thoughts were focused on the delicate balance he was trying to maintain. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure to succeed was immense. In the days that followed, the joint scientific team worked tirelessly to understand the hybridization process. Both Novian and human scientists pored over data, conducted experiments, and analyzed the rapid changes occurring in Aria's body. Despite the tension and mistrust between the two groups, they found common ground in their shared goal. Rick and Aria met frequently, their discussions ranging from scientific data to potential diplomatic strategies. The process was slow and fraught with challenges, but they made progress. The hybrid entity was proving to be more complex than either side had anticipated. One night, as they reviewed the latest data, Aria's expression was particularly grim. The accelerated development is showing signs of instability. If this continues, the hybrid might not be viable, and we could face severe biological complications. Rick's heart sank. Is there any way to stabilize it? Aria shook her head. We're exploring all possibilities, but the data suggests that without intervention, the hybrid could pose a serious threat to both our species. Rick's mind raced. If it's unstable, we need to find a way to either stabilize it or halt the process before it's too late. If we don't act soon, we might face a crisis that neither of us can control. Aria's gaze softened, revealing a hint of the fear and exhaustion she had been hiding. We need a breakthrough, Rick. If we don't find one soon, the consequences could be catastrophic. As the tension between them mounted, Rick knew that the fate of their worlds rested on their ability to overcome their differences and work together. The hybridization process was both a bridge and a barrier, a testament to the complexities of their encounter and the fragile hope they clung to. The stakes had never been higher, and every decision they made could mean the difference between conflict and coexistence. The future of their species depended on their ability to navigate this unprecedented crisis, and time was running out. The path of reconciliation. In the days that followed, the urgency of the situation weighed heavily on both Rick and Aria. The medical team worked around the clock, analyzing data and conducting experiments to stabilize the hybrid entity. The atmosphere was tense, and every interaction between the Novian and human scientists was tinged with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. One evening, as Rick and Aria reviewed the latest results in the dimly lit medical bay, Aria's face reflected the strain of their relentless efforts. "The data is clear," she said, her voice weary. "The hybrid consciousness is evolving too rapidly. It's creating neural pathways at an alarming rate, and the instability is increasing." Rick sighed. "We need to find a way to slow down or stabilize this process. If we don't, the risk of a catastrophic event grows every hour." Aria nodded. "We've considered various options, but each comes with its own set of risks. One potential solution is to introduce a stabilizing agent into the hybrid's development process. However, it requires precise calibration to avoid exacerbating the instability." Rick's eyes lit up. "If we can find a way to stabilize the hybrid, it might allow us to study it more thoroughly and understand its potential. This could be the key to resolving the situation." Aria hesitated. "There's another factor we need to consider. The Council is becoming increasingly impatient. If we don't make significant progress soon, they might take drastic measures to contain the situation." Rick's heart sank. "We're running out of time. We need to devise a plan to demonstrate that we're making headway and provide a tangible solution that addresses the Council's concerns." Aria agreed, and together they devised a strategy to present their progress to the High Council. The plan involved showcasing their efforts to stabilize the hybrid and detailing the potential benefits of their collaboration. It was a high-stakes presentation, and they needed to convince the Council that their work was both credible and promising. The day of the presentation arrived, and Rick and Aria stood before the High Council, their combined efforts reflected in the data and reports they had prepared. The Council members observed them with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Zara, who had been a constant presence throughout the crisis, addressed them. "Ambassador Johnson, Consul Aria, we are prepared to hear your report. Explain to us why we should believe that this hybridization process can be controlled and that it does not pose a threat to our species." Rick stepped forward, his voice steady. "Esteemed Council members, our joint efforts have led to significant progress. We have developed a stabilizing agent that has shown promise in preliminary tests. This agent can regulate the hybridization process and mitigate the risks associated with its rapid development." He gestured to the holographic display, which showcased the results of their experiments. "Our data indicates that the stabilizing agent can effectively slow down the development of the hybrid consciousness, allowing us to study it more thoroughly." This will enable us to understand its potential and develop strategies to ensure its stability. Arya continued, "We acknowledge the risks involved, but our collaborative efforts have already provided valuable insights. By working together, we have the opportunity to create a breakthrough that could benefit both our species. We urge you to consider the potential for cooperation and understanding that this situation presents." The council members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. Zara spoke again. "Your proposal is intriguing, but we need more concrete evidence of its effectiveness. We will grant you a limited time frame to further demonstrate the stability of the hybrid. If you succeed, we may reconsider our stance." Rick and Arya exchanged a relieved glance. "Thank you," Rick said. "We will do everything in our power to meet the council's expectations." As they left the council chamber, Rick and Arya felt a renewed sense of determination. The limited time frame they had been granted was both a challenge and an opportunity. They knew that their next steps would be crucial in shaping the outcome of the crisis. Back in the medical bay, the scientific team redoubled their efforts. The stabilizing agent was refined, and experiments were conducted to ensure its effectiveness. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of urgency as everyone worked toward their common goal. Amid the flurry of activity, Rick and Arya found moments of respite in their discussions. They talked not only about the technical aspects of their work, but also about their personal experiences and hopes for the future. These conversations deepened their understanding of each other and strengthened their partnership. One evening, as they reviewed the latest results, Rick looked at Arya with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "I never imagined that we'd end up here, working side by side like this. It's been challenging, but I've come to appreciate your strength and dedication." Arya's expression softened, "And I've come to see the value in your persistence and willingness to collaborate. Despite our differences, we've managed to find common ground. That's something worth holding onto." Their growing bond was a testament to the power of collaboration and understanding. As they continued their work, they faced the uncertainty of the hybridization process with renewed resolve. The path to reconciliation was fraught with challenges, but their combined efforts offered a glimmer of hope for a future where their species could coexist and thrive. The next phase of their work would be critical in proving the effectiveness of their stabilizing solution. With the High Council's scrutiny looming, Rick and Arya knew that their success would depend on their ability to navigate the complexities of the hybridization process and demonstrate the potential for positive outcomes. As they prepared for the next steps, Rick and Arya remained focused on their goal: to find a solution that would protect both their species and pave the way for a new era of cooperation and understanding. The turning point. As the days slipped by, the pressure on Rick and Arya intensified. The deadline imposed by the High Council was fast approaching, and their efforts to stabilize the hybrid entity had become a race against time. The lab was a hive of activity, with scientists and technicians working tirelessly to refine the stabilizing agent and monitor the hybrid's development. One evening, amidst the hum of machinery and the flicker of holographic displays, Arya paced the room, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We're running out of time," she said, her voice taut with anxiety. "The stabilizing agent isn't producing the results we need. The hybrid's neural pathways are still unstable." Rick, who was poring over the latest data, looked up with a determined expression. "We have to think outside the box. Maybe we're missing something in the hybrid's biological response. Could there be an underlying factor we haven't considered?" Arya's eyes narrowed as she thought. "There might be. We've been focusing on the stabilizing agent, but we haven't fully explored how the hybrid's environment affects its development. We need to examine the external factors influencing the process." Rick nodded. "Let's analyze the environmental conditions in the lab and see if there's a correlation between them and the hybrid's instability. Maybe we can adjust the conditions to create a more controlled environment." They set to work, adjusting various parameters in the lab, from temperature and humidity to electromagnetic fields. The process was meticulous, but they hoped it would yield new insights into the hybrid's development. Hours later, As they reviewed the new data, Aria's eyes widened with cautious optimism. "Rick, look at this. The changes we made seem to have stabilized the hybrid's neural pathways to some extent. It's not perfect, but it's a significant improvement." Rick's heart raced with excitement. This is promising. We need to continue refining these conditions and test the stabilizing agent under these new parameters. If we can show the Council that we're making tangible progress, it might buy us more time. Their renewed focus on environmental factors led to a breakthrough in their research. They discovered that by carefully regulating the conditions within the lab, they could significantly reduce the hybrid's instability. The results were not yet perfect, but they were promising enough to warrant further testing.